Commander Zekthor's three eyes widened as the translation matrix finally cracked the primitive radio signals emanating from the third planet. His scales rippled with anticipation. Earth, the locals called it, a backwater world ripe for conquest. The Kravoshian Empire had consumed 17 civilizations in the past cycle alone, and this one would be no different. "Sir, we've intercepted their primary communication channels," his tactical officer announced, mandibles clicking with excitement. They broadcast everything openly. No encryption, no caution. They're practically begging to be invaded. Zekthor studied the holographic display showing Earth's pale blue surface. Excellent. What is their military capacity? Laughable, Commander. They still use chemical propulsion. Their weapons rely on kinetic projectiles and primitive explosives. They've barely left their own moon. The officer paused, accessing more data. They can't even agree on a unified planetary government. They're divided into nearly 200 separate nation-states constantly bickering. A rumbling sound echoed through the bridge, Kravosian laughter. Pathetic. We'll have this planet stripped and processed within a solar rotation. Prepare the invasion fleet. I want 12 dreadnoughts and— Commander! The communications specialist suddenly lurched backward from her console, her violet skin turning pale. I found something. What is it? A message. It was attached to one of their deep space probes. Voyager, they called it, launched over 200 of their years ago. Her voice trembled. You need to see this. Zekthor approached the console, irritation giving way to curiosity. The screen displayed a golden disk, a record of sorts meant as a greeting to any species that might find it. It contained images, sounds, and mathematical formulae, standard first contact protocol for primitive species. But then he saw the other files the specialist had decoded. His blood turned cold. The first document detailed something called the World Wars. Zekthor watched in growing horror as humans, fragile, short-lived creatures, slaughtered each other by the millions. Not over resources or territory that made strategic sense, but over ideologies and pride. They had invented weapons capable of burning entire cities in an instant, then actually used them. Twice. This can't be accurate, Zekthor muttered. These numbers, 60 million casualties in a single conflict. It gets worse, sir, the specialist whispered. She pulled up more data. They call it the Cold War. After nearly destroying themselves, they built enough nuclear weapons to render their planet uninhabitable dozens of times over. They pointed these weapons at themselves for decades, living under the constant threat of extinction. And they just continued, worked, raised families, went about their lives as if it were normal. Zekthor's tactical officer joined them, his confidence evaporating as he read the files. Look at this, they documented it, made entertainment about it. They tell their children stories about the end of their world for fun. The bridge fell silent as more information flooded in. Humans had survived an ice age with nothing but fur clothing and sharp rocks. They had sailed across hostile oceans in wooden vessels, knowing many wouldn't return just to see what was on the other side. They had climbed mountains that killed them by the dozens, for no strategic reason except that the mountains were there. Pull up their literature, Zekthor ordered, his voice barely steady. What appeared on screen made his scales stand on end. Humans had imagined every possible apocalypse, alien invasions, robot uprisings, zombie plagues, nuclear holocaust, and in their stories they always fought back. They never surrendered. In their fiction they died standing up, taking their enemies with them. But it was the historical records that truly shattered his confidence. A human named Desmond Doss had run into gunfire unarmed to save his comrades, 75 times in one battle. A woman named Stanislav Petrov had stopped a nuclear war by trusting his instinct over his instruments. Humans had landed on their own moon using computers less powerful than their children's toys, simply because someone said it was impossible. Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked. I found their training footage. Their military forces, they volunteer. They choose to fight. And look at their special operations units. They undergo training that would break most of our warriors. Sleep deprivation, near drowning, extreme temperatures. They do this to themselves voluntarily. Zekthor pulled up footage of human soldiers. They were small, weak by Kravosian standards. But their eyes, there was something in their eyes. A defiance, a refusal to accept defeat. He found a quote from one of their leaders, embedded in the Voyager message. We shall fight on the beaches, We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Another voice from their history. I have not yet begun to fight. And another. Nuts. A one-word response to a demand for surrender. Commander? His second-in-command approached cautiously. Perhaps we should reconsider. If even a fraction of these records are accurate. Zekthor stared at the pale blue planet rotating slowly on his display. The Kravosian Empire had never retreated from an inferior species. Never. But they'd also never encountered anything like this. These humans were barely out of their cradle, still fighting among themselves, technically primitive by galactic standards. But they were also completely, utterly insane. They thrived on adversity. They ran toward danger. They had looked at their own extinction countless times and responded not with surrender, but with defiance and adaptation. What would they become if someone gave them a common enemy? Adjust our course. Zekthor finally ordered, his voice heavy with a decision that went against every instinct. We're bypassing this system. Sir? Multiple voices echoed in confusion. Look at them. He gestured to the screen showing humans laughing, playing, building. They're at peace now, mostly. Imagine what they become when threatened. When united. He shook his head slowly. The Empire has conquered 17 civilizations. But these humans, they've survived countless apocalypses of their own making. They've stared into the void of extinction again and again, and every single time they've climbed back out stronger. He entered the command codes himself, watching as the fleet began to turn away. I won't be the commander who unites humanity. I won't be the threat that transforms them from fractured tribes into a unified species, with a grudge and a gift for creative violence. Mark this system as restricted. Quarantine level 10. As the Kravosian fleet jumped to hyperspace, abandoning their invasion plans, one thought echoed through Zekthor's mind. Thank the stars they haven't figured out how dangerous they really are. Behind them, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, its inhabitants completely unaware of the invasion fleet that had retreated in fear. Fear inspired not by humanity's weapons, but by humanity's indomitable spirit. The message on the Voyager probe drifted on through the cosmos, a warning disguised as a greeting. We are here. We survived. We persist. And perhaps most terrifying of all, we never give up.